Hello everybody and welcome to another Mystery Box Function Challenge. In the purple mystery box there is some math and your challenge is to figure out what that is. Because it's Friday, it's particularly challenging math. If you'd like to try it out, use the link in the description and see what you can come up with. When you've got an idea, come on back and see if we get the same thing. All right, let's start with a 0 today. Oh. So 0 is infinity. So right away, I'm thinking we get that error. 0 is not really infinity. We get that error when we have a rational function. So 1 over x or something in that family, maybe. So let's jot that down. And how about 1? What is that? 2. Okay, so it's not just 1 over x. Maybe it's 2 over x. I don't know. Well, it's not 2 over x, because if it was 2 over 2, that should just be 1, but we've got 0.75. But in general, it's looking like this arm you would expect from a rational function. Let me put in something a little further out. I'm going to put in a 6. Okay, and that's a small fraction close to that x-axis. I think it's going to continue on out, getting closer and closer to the x-axis. And what I would expect is, as we put in fractional values here, we get closer and closer to the y-axis. So let's try a couple. Yeah, that's going up pretty fast. Let's put in 1/3. Oh, and we're already off the charts. Okay, well, let's see what we have in the negative. So if this is a typical rational function, I would expect an arm down here in the 3rd quadrant. So let's try a -1. Oh, well, that's interesting. So -1 is 0, which is unusual because I would expect in a typical rational function for 0 to be one of the asymptotes. And it looks like it's one of the asymptotes on the right, but doesn't appear to be on the left because we're actually at 0. Let's try a few more values. So maybe -2. And there we are below. Let's go out a little further, maybe -6. Now it looks like we're coming back up towards it and getting closer and closer. That's really interesting. Let's look in here at these negative values between 0 and -1. Okay. So, this is not quite symmetrical. Let's say 1/4. Oh, we're off the chart already. Let's try 1/3. That's off the graph as well. Okay, well, I think we have a lot of clues here to work with. First of all, I expected something, if it was a rational function with x on the bottom, I expected an arm here and an arm down in the 3rd quadrant. It looks like we have 2 arms, and mostly this arm is in, well, the lower part of it is in the 3rd quadrant, but the part that goes up is in the 2nd quadrant. And that's something, this sort of shape where you'd have, whoops, let me grab my pen, where you'd have an arm here, so here's the y-axis, and then an arm over here. This would be 1 over x squared. Because it's got that shape, I'm thinking we have something like that. So I'm thinking x squared is probably on the bottom. What's on the top, I don't know. And maybe there's something else on the bottom too. We might have to figure this out by plugging in some numbers. I think in this case, the best thing to do is to grab some points that have whole numbers and just make some guesses about how you could get there. And the first one I'm seeing is 1. Actually, let me back up to 0. I think maybe there's not anything else going down on the bottom unless it's a multiplier, because 0, we get that infinity error. That would happen if you tried to put in a 0. You square 0, you get 0. You can't have 0 on the bottom of a fraction. So maybe this is just x squared or something times x squared, but nothing else added. What about the top? How would we get 2 here? Let's just think about the simplest way we could do that with x squared on the bottom. So if we put in 1, that would be 1 squared on the bottom. To get 2, we'd need to put in 2 on the top. So, and then we put in 1, so that could be x plus 1, I suppose. Let's fool around with that one and test some others. So what happens when you put in a 2? So 2 plus 1 over 2 squared. That would be 3 over 4. Oh, look at that. And we've got 0.75. That looks pretty promising now for at least for the right-hand side. Let's look at some stuff on the left-hand side. We got this 0 when we put in a -1. So, oh, and that makes sense because if you put in a -1 here, -1 plus 1 is 0 on the top with a 1 on the bottom, that would give you 0. How about this -2? I think this is going to be the clincher for me if this works out. So let's put that in. -2 for x plus 1 over -2 quantity squared. So on the bottom, we're going to get 4, and this is -2 plus 1. That's going to be -1. I should get -1/4, and that's what we get. Okay, I think we stumbled onto our right answer. So our function is going to be x plus 1 on the top and x squared on the bottom, I'm pretty sure. Let's take a look at this. Yeah, there it is. So we have the f of x equals x plus 1 over x squared, and we can graph that. Interesting. So it's like that 1 over x squared, except that x plus 1 does something a little funky to the left-hand side, makes it drop below the x-axis and then come back up to it as an asymptote. Well, how did that go for you? I think that was super tough. If you got in the ballpark of a rational function, I think you should feel pretty good about that. Let me know. Thanks, everybody.